Hey everyone, hope you have an amazing day. This is FC with CappersDirect.com here to talk to you guys and bring you guys your UFC first look preview for the main card going down Saturday, February 4th. Derrick Lewis versus Serghei Spivac. Let's get into your main event breakdown now. All right, so let's get into your main event for this weekend, February 4th. It's going to be Derrick Lewis versus Serghei Spivac coming at you in the heavyweight division. First, let's look at the Derrick Lewis side. Derrick Lewis is almost 38 years old, so he's getting up there in age. The height and reach is going to be about the same as Serghei Spivac, but we know that Derrick Lewis is coming off of 2 KO losses. KO losses that he always has a chance in winning because he always goes out and swings bombs. He swings big. He's a guy that doesn't look to win minutes, but he wins the big moments in fights. And so he's the one who's going to have a power edge. We've seen Derrick Lewis go up against a grappler before. This is going to be very similar, but a little bit different. And we've seen Derrick Lewis knock those guys clean out. We've seen Derrick Lewis time an uppercut when they come in to shoot perfectly. He knows how to do those things. Question is, I do worry about Derrick Lewis. I do worry about his health in this fight. I do wonder about his health in this fight, and we'll get into it more this week and in the write-up. But looking at Serghei Spivac, this guy is the Moldovan gangster. He's a polar bear. I mean, that's his nickname. He's a guy who is going to look to wrestle heavy. I remember when Serghei came out into the UFC, fought Walt Harris, and got dominated. I mean, Walt Harris just came out and just blitzed him. Walt Harris was like our max fight pick that night or something like that. No, maybe we had him in a parlay, something crazy. But we were all over Walt Harris there, and Walt Harris ran him over. After that, he went back to the drawing board and said, look, what do I do best? I wrestle. I grind. I can do this. I can come back and just go. I was overwhelmed in that first fight. I can go now. And he's proven that he can do those things. I mean, he beat Jared Vanderaa. He beat Alexei Oleinik. He lost to Tom Aspinall by KO, and that's something of note because he is a guy who can be overwhelmed and KO'd himself. But then we're looking at, he's coming off of a KO win with Greg Hardy and Augusto Sakai. The Greg Hardy one, that's significant because Greg Hardy cuts a lot of weight to get down. Greg Hardy was in the NFL. Greg Hardy was being thrown around by Serghei Spivac. Don't get me wrong. Greg Hardy got his licks in, and that's the thing. That's the thing I think is important here. Is Derrick Lewis going to catch Serghei first, or is Serghei going to just maul him, polar bear him, get him down? And then when Serghei gets you down, when Spivac gets you down, he doesn't just sit there and look at you. He doesn't just sit there and want to just lay on top of you. He's a guy who's going to go down there and try to get a finish. He's going to ground and pound you. He's going to try to get a submission. He's going to constantly work. He knows that he has this mauling style. This is what he wants to put out there in the UFC. In his mind, he describes himself much like Khabib described himself. Now, he doesn't use the words Khabib or anything like that, but when he describes his style, he describes mauling, polar bear. He describes grabbing someone around the weights and just throwing them down to the ground. These are the things he wants to do to Derrick Lewis. Derrick Lewis has a history of when people do throw him down, like The Undertaker, he just gets up. He literally does. He does no technique at all, just muscle, like, hold on. He just gets up right away. So the question is Derrick Lewis going to be able to do that this whole time? Is Derrick Lewis healthy? You guys are going to want to tune in this write-up to see exactly how we're going to bet this fight because I have a feeling there's going to be a knockout. I have a feeling there's going to be a finish in this fight. That is one thing that the violence is extraordinarily prevalent throughout this entire fight. That is evident. But is Derrick Lewis planning to hit Spivac with the same combination or the same setup that he's hit other wrestlers with? Does he have a game plan? Does he see something in Spivac that he can prove to me that, okay, I can knock this dude out. This is how. Much like he did before. And then he went out and did it. But this is a little bit different. I need to see how Derrick Lewis looks this week. I need to talk to Derrick Lewis. But this week, we're going to check up on Derrick Lewis and know exactly who to pick for this fight. But as of right now, I have to favor Serghei Spivac. He's going to be the favorite, I believe. He was the favorite last time. So he's going to be the favorite this time, I believe. So let's get into your next fight. All right, now let's get into your co-main event. Your co-main event is coming at you from the light heavyweight division. We have Da Un Jung versus Devin Clark. Let's look at the Da Un Jung side because there's something significant here on Da Un Jung. Da Un Jung is I think this fight in particular, this is the reason why you have write-ups. This is the reason why all the research this week is going to be done. Because in this fight, it comes down to, I consider to be like a weird factor. Look at just MMA math in general. It doesn't work out, and you can see that. Look at Jung, knockout guy, right? He's a guy who comes out, swings big. What did he do against William Knight, who is also a knockout guy? He wrestled him, took him down, used some of that judo that he has in his back pocket, and used some of his size in order to take down William Knight and beat him that way. How did Devin Clark beat William Knight? By meeting him in the middle and knocking him out. But when you look at Devin Clark's not necessarily like a KO guy. Like he's a wrestler at heart. But looking at Jung, this guy is 6'4". 78-inch reach, 29 years old. So he's going to have size. He struggles with wrestling normally, but things that I've seen from this camp is judo throws in order to, once somebody has you close by, in order to be able to be the one who gets on top. So he's working on some of those transitions currently, but I also fear about his gas tank a little bit. I wonder about his gas tank and whether or not he's going to be there for the full 3 rounds to try to beat up Devin Clark. Now, looking at Devin Clark, he's going to be 6 foot. 6 foot compared to 6'4". 6 foot's going to be shorter. 75-inch reach. 75-inch reach compared to 78-inch reach. Going to be smaller reach. He's also 32 years old. So there are a lot of intangibles that are just going against Devin Clark. But the thing that Devin Clark has is those takedowns. That's what he can go down to. Now, my worry about Devin Clark is in this camp, I saw a lot of striking. And this is a guy who has a wrestling base, but knows he needs to get better in striking. But when you see a guy drill so much striking over and over, man, I'd like to see a guy coming into this with a loss, drilling his strengths, like going back to his roots and kind of building that foundation, that mental foundation back up. So when you lose a fight the way he lost his last fight, which was by ground and pound KO, there's a mental aspect that comes in with that you have to attest. You have to be able to get back in there and know, like, okay, I can do this. I'm not fearful. And Devin Clark was always one of those guys I worried about if he was going to fear that knockout again, if he was going to come back and be hesitant. And I did see that in one of his fights that he had. He did hesitate on his return back. But then as he gained his confidence back, he started to swing bombs and starting to realize, like, okay, I can do this. I got a chin. I can do this. And he got a couple of wins under his belt, especially a really good one in William Knight. But Devin Clark can be broken. He's a guy who's been fighting that. I worry about his camp. I worry about his camp heavily. I mean, I know you should be striking in order to get better in that aspect, but coming off of a loss, it's time to get back to your roots, especially knowing that you're about to fight a guy who you probably can take down potentially and outwork if you just work on your cardio and on your strengths. I just didn't necessarily see that. So I'm not all over the Devin Clark train. I like Jung now coming in, but this week is going to dictate a lot. So you guys are going to tune into those write-ups because I did circle Devin Clark as a possible underdog. And when you look at the matchup, we're talking about a wrestler versus a striker. And we're talking about a pretty good wrestler. A wrestler that's trained with John Jones. A pretty good guy. Pretty good takedowns. Can potentially, if he wanted to, maul someone. I've seen him after he said, like, I'm going to take him down, all this stuff. In other fights, he comes out and just swings big bombs and goes out there and doesn't look good. And that's what I worry about here, watching him train striking. Is he going to go out there and try to just bang again? I hope not. I hope he goes for takedowns because that's the Devin Clark that I thought was super live. The Devin Clark I thought was super live was the one that I've seen take punches, the one I've seen that had a gas tank, the one I've seen. You're going to see this guy with humongous legs. The guy I've seen go in there and just run through a guy, pick him up and take him down. That's the Devin Clark I would prefer to see. That's the Devin Clark that if we can determine that that's what we're going to get on Saturday night, that's a Devin Clark worth betting on. So you guys are going to want to tune into that right up. But let's get into your next fight. All right, so your next fight is going to come at you from the heavyweight division. Also, we have Marcin Tybura versus Blagoy Ivanov. Let's look at Marcin Tybura first. Marcin Tybura is 37 years old. He's 6'3", 78-inch reach. The guy is a grinder. He is a guy who he's going to move forward. He plans to move forward. He plans to kickbox. He plans to gain takedowns where he feels that you're vulnerable in, and he wants to move forward and try to elevate his volume. that's what Marcin Tybura tries to do and is going to try to do in this fight. Let's look at Blagoy Ivanov. Blagoy Ivanov is 36 years old, so they're very equivalent when it comes to intangibles in that aspect, but not when it comes to the height and reach. Blagoy Ivanov's always been a smaller heavyweight. He's a heavyweight that's super, super durable. I mean, he fought Derrick Lewis, didn't get knocked out. Fought Tai Tuivasa, didn't get knocked out. Has fought killers. Now, I've seen him stunned, and I've seen him, take a second where his brain, I call them brain zaps, like when you pause for a second. I've seen some of those things from him, but he doesn't take a ton of risk. He has a style that he rolls with certain punches, and he himself will always move backwards. It's one of these things. It's very risk averse, but he takes those chances sometimes to explode and looks for openings to come over the top and swing big and go to the body and do other things. He's just very low volume. This is a guy who's been stabbed in the heart before. We're talking about an actual knife stab. Like, he's got heart for days, and I don't mean that as a pun. I've seen this guy hit by lunch boxes for fists. Humongous fists coming across and nailing them clean, and he just eats it. This is a fighter that over 1.5, probably a lock. But the over 1.5, I think, is going to be like crazy juice. Any fight to go to decision is going to probably be juice, because I don't think anyone's expecting these fighters to come out and do the dang thing. I don't think anyone's expecting these fighters to light it on fire. But talking to Marcin Tybura, he's going to move forward. He's going to try to bring the action. He wants to fight for a championship. He knows that in order to fight for a championship, he has to use all of his skills and try to be the most exciting fighter that he can be. That doesn't always translate to exciting fights when you have someone who's risk adverse like Blagoy Ivanov. I expect in this fight, Marcin Tybura move forward, Blagoy Ivanov to use his big strikes to try to win. It's going to be what the judges see on that night. If Marcin Tybura could get buzzed, he's been knocked out before, he can get rocked. Blagoy Ivanov's not necessarily the biggest puncher, but the guy can hit. The guy can swing. Anybody in this weight division can knock anyone out. It's true. The heavyweights just have a different kind of power. In this fight, I do think Blagoy Ivanov has a chance, but it's going to come down to what Marcin Tybura is planning and whether or not he can execute that game plan. His game plan is going to be to march forward and do the dang thing. Is he going to be able to achieve that? I think this week we'll be able to see a little bit more into this matchup. But, Marcin Tybura, I don't necessarily expect this to be the most exciting fight on the card. When you see a heavyweight fight juiced at over 1.5, that doesn't necessarily give me the best confidence that someone's going to get knocked out. But this is heavyweight. Anything could happen. As of right now, I don't have a bet on this fight. It's just an ugly fight, in my opinion. I don't necessarily love it. I can see wins on both sides depending on what the judges see that night. And I do see this one going into decision. I just expect that number to be juiced. So that's the breakdown for this one. Not anything crazy exciting, much like I think the fight's going to be. Kind of boring. We'll see. But let's get into your next fight. All right, your next fight breakdown is coming at you from the featherweight division. That's 145 pounds. We have the return of Doo Ho Choi versus Kyle Nelson. Let's get into the Doo Ho Choi side because I'm excited for Doo Ho Choi. Doo Ho Choi is on a 3-year layoff. He hasn't won a fight in over 6 years, almost 6.5, 7 years. He is a Korean fighter. Now, these Korean fighters, a lot of them are all about their country, and they do a 3-year stint of mandatory service, and so Doo Ho Choi was doing his stint. He's now 31 years old. He's a little bit older. He's 5'10", 70-inch reach. When Doo Ho Choi was fighting on the regular in the UFC, he's a great striker. He's known as the Korean Superboy. But one thing I will note is in service, he was working his grappling. He was working his wrestling. He was really trying to round out his MMA game while he was in service in the Korean Army. Now, the Korean service is a little bit different. In talking to the Korean Zombie, he was able to do a lot of things. The Korean Zombie, when I spoke with the Korean Zombie about his service, able to train, able to teach fighters, able to teach people how to fight. He's able to train, able to teach people how to fight. And the service really was a great thing for the Korean Zombie in terms of getting away and training. It wasn't a great thing in taking years away from his life, right? And that's one thing Choi has had to go up against, is that he's had 3 years off and he hasn't won in 6.5 years. But I'm expecting this kid, based off of everything, to come out pretty good, to come out swinging, to come out and really show the world that this is my breaking out party. It's time. I have a short window here and I'm going to break out. Now, the concerning part is that 3 years ago, we saw Choi get knocked out by Charles Jourdain. I mean, this is a guy who got knocked out by Jeremy Stevens right before that. Got knocked out by, or not knocked out, but had a crazy fight with Cub Swanson. I mean, they went back and forth. Big bombs, rocked both ways. Both guys were just rocked. I thought Cub Swanson finished him in that fight, but I guess it went to decision, and that's how long ago. But I'm the guy who remembers when he knocked out Sam Cecilia. You know, all these other guys out here that break down fights and that break down things, I mean, they've been in this space for a little while. I've been in this space for a long time. And so not only do I remember when Choi made his debut in the UFC, but I was excited for it and knew that something special was on the horizon for him. Now he's taken a few setbacks. When right before going into service, there were a lot of things that weren't necessarily on the Choi side, and I think we saw his lack of focus come out in some of those losses. But in this fight, I'm expecting him to come back strong. And then we have Kyle Nelson. Kyle Nelson, I consider him to be a wrestler. He's a guy who goes out there, he kill or be killed. That's what he's all about. Now, in his last fight, he was extraordinarily overwhelmed, and I did see that that's something he doesn't want to do anymore. So I'm expecting Kyle Nelson to come down here and test Choi with the wrestling. I expect Kyle Nelson, he's now 31 years old, 5'11", very similar in height and reach, and wants to come out here and show Choi that, hey, man, I got this grappling thing on lock. I got this wrestling thing, and I'm about to get this win in the UFC. I know I'm on a crazy losing streak, but it doesn't matter. I'm coming out here, and I'm going to take this win. Choi, the things that I've heard from his side, man, I think the guy's going to be leveled up. I know that I know there's a risk in that. I know there's a risk in thinking that Choi, off for 3 years, hasn't won in 6. Some of those guys just don't know how to win anymore. I mean, some of those guys, the game passes them by so quickly. But the reports are all suggesting that Choi the whole time was training hardcore, getting better. It's just he doesn't have necessarily that fight experience that he would have had he been getting better and also fighting those 3 years. So I like the Choi side. I do recognize Kyle Nelson's craziness and his ability to come out, get knocked out, or his ability to come out and land something. And we have seen Choi, the Korean Superboy, knocked out before. But violence is another good look here. But you're going to want to tune in on Friday for that write-up that's going to tell you exactly how to bet this fight. Whether this fight, I could tell you that one of these guys might win by submission for all I know. Last time, I told you guys I was going to give you not only the underdog, I was going to give you the method and the round. What happened? Plus 800 cash for you guys. Plus 800. Yeah, that's right. The underdog that was way above plus 200 cash. We had him straight up. The underdog by TKO inside the distance. All those things cashed, right? But that special one that I told you guys on the video, and I said, hey, I'm going to tell you the method in the round. If you guys bet it plus 800, it was a steal right there in a write-up for you. It was all there. And they had a bunch of things in all the write-ups that helped you. And so you're going to want to tune in for this one as well. All right, so let's get into your next fight. All right, so your last breakdown for the main card for February 4th is going to be coming at you from the welterweight division. Now, we're going to use just the last name of one and just the first name of another one so that YouTube doesn't necessarily... it doesn't necessarily kill us, but we're going to go with Yusaku Kinoshita versus Adam Fugitt. Now, Adam versus Kinoshita. I think Kinoshita, we can say Kinoshita. We can say Kinoshita. Fugitt might translate, especially in my ramblings, might come out as a little bit promiscuous. So we're going to go with Adam for him, okay? So we got Kinoshita. He's 6-1, young guy coming out of the Contender Series. Got power for days. He considers himself to be a pretty big guy for this weight class, but he's going to run into pretty other big guys as well. But 6-1, not a lot of experience there. You're looking at a guy who does come out, bang, swings hard, and is going to be a big favorite. Last I saw, he was like minus 300. Now, Adam, he's 8-3. He's a southpaw. Both guys are southpaws. Last time he lost to Morales, put up a pretty good fight, but lost to a pretty good prospect who also had power. But we know Adam's game. Adam's going to go for takedowns. He's going to, in his last fight, we got to see, and I think maybe that's why this line is the way it is, because of recency bias. We saw in his last fight, who did Adam go up against? Another prospect who bangs. What happened? Adam got finished. Adam's been finished in the past. But does Adam have a path of victory? Yes, through the takedowns and through the experience. I know he's only 8-3, but the level of competition on Adam's side is better than the level of competition from Kinoshita. Now, Kinoshita, even though he's 6-1 and can bang, who is the 6 fights that he's beating? Who are those people? Are they significant? Are they good? This is going to come down to, are you going to take a chance on the underdog, that big underdog, because he has better experience and a path of victory that pertains to his grappling? Are you going to believe the recency bias, the fact that Adam's been knocked out in the past? He just got knocked out by another prospect who bangs, and he's going up against another prospect who bangs. Or are you going to go and say, okay, the guy from Japan is going to come in here, very, very limited experience, and just say, forget it, throw caution to the wind and just knock out Adam again? That's what you have to sort of, if you're going to go to the betting window, you have to make way. You have to be okay with one of those things happening. And I just don't necessarily know if I can count on Kinoshita to get that knockout against a guy who has the potential to take him down and really wear him out and bring him into places that Kinoshita doesn't necessarily like to be. This is a guy who likes to KO. He likes to get the submission, likes to get the TKO punches, right? This is a guy who wants to get a finish. And so I just don't know if he's ready yet for this level. Adam's going to be a pretty good prospect. I know he came out and he just lost to a very similar situation, but I don't necessarily see it that way. I think Adam has a chance. I'll let you know this week in the write-ups, though, if we're going to put a hefty bet on Adam or actual bet on Adam. Are we're gonna say forget it, because the things I saw, Kinoshita looks really good, and Kinoshita's probably gonna get knocked out first round, right? Who knows necessarily how that's gonna go? I'll find out this week, and I'm gonna let you guys know. And you guys are gonna tune into that write-up on Friday that is going to detail all the fights out, not just the main card, but all the fights, and give you guys all the juicy underdogs to pick up and get some money. So let's make this money. Let's go. Now, if you like this kind of content, be sure to give it a thumbs up, give it a like, turn on your post notifications, and comment down below UFC. All those comments, all those thumbs up help us, help the video get pushed forward, and also helps us in the algorithm. So be sure to hit that like button, hit that post notifications button so that you know the video comes out right away. In the next video, you guys can like right away and put a comment down below and give us some support when it comes down to these things. Saturday, February 4th, it's going to be a great day to win, baby. Let's get it.